On Monday, BC Finance Minister Mike de Jong announced changes regarding the regulation of the British Columbia real estate industry. First, he announced that there will be a special summer sitting of the legislature on July 25th to enact the changes. In particular, the province will modify the Vancouver Charter to allow the city to implement, enforce, and collect a vacancy tax on empty properties within the city. This is an attempt to increase the supply of rental housing as it currently sits at about 0.6%. And according to the city, the number of vacant homes was 10,800 in March. Now, I'm always skeptical about new taxes as they rarely create the kind of change that they're sold on. So for more on this, I caught up with Jordan Bateman from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation earlier today.
It's such a bad, faulty tax plan. It's almost impossible to enforce. So just sit back and think of the bureaucratic nightmare. What defines a vacant house? Is it 6 months, 9 months, a year? Gregor said a year. Well, if I own a property, why wouldn't I rent it out on Airbnb for a night or two, make sure that I have my vacancy and, not actually have to go back into the rental pool? This is one of these taxes that is actually about social engineering, trying to force a certain kind of behavior, but it's going to end up costing taxpayers a lot of money to collect.
I've heard there've been proposals for other taxes beyond just vacancy tax. We've heard luxury taxes, speculation taxes. So could this really just be the beginning of a landslide of new taxes to come to the city?
Yeah, I think Gregor and his Vision Vancouver Council have proposed 5 different taxes in order to change the housing market in Vancouver, which is absolutely ridiculous. This is the tip of the iceberg. But I'm actually glad that this one is going first, because this is going to be a disaster for city taxpayers. The great thing the province has done is said, great, you want to do it? You do it. You collect it, you define it, you make it work. They know in Victoria it's unworkable, and they're going to watch Vancouver fall on this.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately one of those City of Vancouver taxpayers, so we're going to have to suffer through it. But if you're not in the city, thankfully, it sounds like they're not going to be on the hook for anything. Just talk, though, a little bit about, maybe some of our viewers don't understand, the city actually already basically charges close to, $100,000 on any new construction in fees and taxes already, don't they?
Yeah, the tax rate on new construction is between about 37 and maybe as high as 50% of that final bill you pay is taxes. There's 107 taxes, fees and regulations on new home construction in Vancouver. So, for people like us who say, look, the best way to solve problems, price problems, is supply. You flood a market with supply and that brings the cost down. We've seen it in every other kind of economic market. This is, basic economic principles. Flood the market with supply and prices go down. These guys instead tax, regulate, and take forever to approve new housing. And of course, that just continues to drive up costs. And where do those costs end up? Coming out of taxpayers' pockets at the end when they're trying to buy these houses.
All right, I do want to get just a quick reaction from you. Last week there was a report put out by the province. There was a lot of feedback from that. I put out a little report. I was a little critical of it. What was your kind of thoughts on it? Does it give a really good example, a cross-section of really the sales situation here in Vancouver, or is it kind of a little bit of smoke and mirrors by the BC government?
Well, I think the BC government was darned if they did and darned if they didn't. If they didn't put out some data here, at some point people would start setting their hair on fire. Where is this data? Obviously, they should have waited till a month in. They should have waited till they had 30 days worth. The interesting thing is I think de Jong might be the only cabinet minister working in British Columbia right now, because he had that last week. He had the vacancy tax. He has some year-end financials coming up. So I'm wondering if they weren't trying to, carve out different news cycles for these different pieces of news. That day was crazy for real estate in BC, because it wasn't just Mike de Jong, the finance minister's report coming out. There was 4 other reports, Van City, I think the Fraser Institute. There are 4 different agencies with 4 different reports talking about housing in Vancouver. And forget about weather, forget about the Canucks, forget about the BC Lions. The only thing we seem to talk about now in the Lower Mainland is real estate.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we're at that point now where people aren't really sure if we're at the tipping point, or it's just going to keep going and going, and people may just have to keep leaving and leaving, sadly. All right, for the Rebel.media with Jordan Bateman here from the CTF, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.